Pumper Cliff show us how to change a tire.
Yeah. Ladies, especially, this is for you. So many times I hear, if you go out on a ride, ladies don't usually think that, especially spouses, don't really often think that they have to know how to change a tire. So I took several classes after my husband died, because he did everything on the bikes. All I had to do was ride. And it really has helped. But the other thing is you don't change tires very often. In fact, the last time I changed a flat tire has been at least 2 years, maybe 3, because I ride tubeless now, and I don't get flat tires. So, does anybody else ride tubeless? Okay, because the only thing I had to say is, I carry for my tubeless, I carry this for the stem, or what do you call it?
Valve stem.
Thank you, the valve stem, yeah. And then I have little patches that are like little straws with rubber attached, and you stick them in the hole, and they plug the hole out. And a pump or a CO2. So anyway, that's for tubeless. However, since you all don't have tubeless, make sure that you carry at least one spare tube on you. I don't know how many times we've stopped for flats and there's 4 or 5 people there, and we go through 2 or 3 tubes because there was a pinch, it was a bad tube, whatever reason. But especially on trips, I take 2, but if I know I'm going to be in a group, one might be good. Also, you need to have your tire irons to get the tire off the rim, and you need a pump. So there's a couple pumps. Actually, Pat has like this one over there. It has a foot pedal and it has a gauge. And I found that after using this one, and it's like a belly pump, it doesn't have a gauge, and it does have a foot pump, but that's to hold it down so you can, get the pressure on. But having a gauge is helpful. A lot of pumps don't pump up over like 80, so be careful what kind of pump. If you're riding a mountain bike or a low pressure tire, that's fine. This is the one with the gauge and the foot pump attached to my. You might want a patch kit. I have yet to patch a tire on the road. I just don't want to take the time, and I'm always worried it won't hold. So if you want to know how to use a patch, you could ask Paul. He's very helpful with patches. In lieu of a pump, I always carry a gas cylinder. I like these. They really pump that tire up fast. There's 2 kinds, threaded and not threaded. There's no difference, but you also need the adapter to go with it, to put it on and put on the tire. Once you release this air, it gets very cold. So the adapter helps because it protects your hands from getting cold, but they're also kind of heavy. I don't know, somebody has them with a valve that can turn it on and off, so you don't have to release the entire contents with one push. So the reason that's important is if you have a spare tube and you want to get a little air in it, you want just a little air. You don't want the whole canister in. Okay, you also might want some chalk. There's chalk in this kit, and it's good because you can mark where the hole is, and then where your hole is on the tire. So the first step is to take the shifters on your bike and move it down to the lowest, smallest cog. This allows you more room to take the tire on and off if it's a back tire, and that's the hardest one, of course, to take on and off. Then you want to, you could wear gloves. A lot of people carry those little gloves on. They're a cotton ball. Okay, then you're going to remove the tire from the rim. Cliff brought a nice tight rim, and then so he can almost do it with his hands.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And you want to give me the steps to do it?
No, this is the
Okay,
step.
I remove the cap,
And then he has to remove the
the,
nut off the.
yeah. This is a flat
valve.
tire, by the way. And then the nut,
I got it.
Thanks.
thank you. And I like to rotate the stem to the bottom. Thank you, Brandon.
So some people will remove the entire tire off the rim. I typically remove half the tire, just one side of it, and then I stick the tube in. Cliff says he usually removes the entire tire from the rim.
Yeah, that's the way I do it. I know there are multiple ways.
This is another tool, kind of a special tool for difficult rims. If you have a tubeless ready rim and you want to get your tire off of that rim, they're usually very deep and difficult. I know we've had to go get cars. Do you understand what I'm saying? The rims have different depths and for the bead to seat. So tubeless tires have to be very snug, and if you don't have tubeless in there. All right, so then, the first thing you want to do is inspect the tire to see if there's any very noticeable nails sticking out of the tire. If there isn't, then you have to when you take the tube out, then you have to look at the tire a lot more carefully from the inside to see if there's anything that's poked through the tire.
That's a good reason to take the tire off entirely.
Makes it easier to check the inside of the tire.
Yeah.
Very true. Also, before you took off the tube, if there was a place where you knew where the hole was, you wanted to mark it at that point
Yeah.
so that you could go check the tire where the hole was on the tube. Okay, then, some of those small pieces of glass or even a small sharp stone gets embedded in those treads, very, very fine. So it's difficult sometimes to find out if there's anything in the tube. But you know how many times have you been on a ride and like we went down on the OTET once and that guy had, I think, 5 or 6 flats and he couldn't find anything in the tire. He finally just bought a new tire. There's something causing a flat, but they could never find it.
And of course, add a little air. Although I saw Brent change a flat.
He just
Last-
lays the tube.
Right.
He just laid the tube into the tire, right?
Yep.
Also,
Yeah.
you should check the inside of the tire like with a cotton ball. And a cotton ball or a piece of cloth or your finger. But the problem with running the finger around the tire is you might find a piece of glass and cause a cut.
But you don't mind because you found a piece of glass.
So when you start putting the tube in, you want to make sure that the stem is straight. You don't want the stem at an angle. You want to put it straight up. And then be very careful not to pinch or twist that tube when you put it inside the tire. I don't know how many times I've had a snake bite because something got twisted. Something got pinched on the rim when you started to inflate it. So you reattach your nut on the valve. Then you put some more air into it. Oh, we should have brought a foot pump in. And then he's going to go around the tire to seat the rim
Yeah.
on the rim.
No, I didn't, I forgot about it.
So at this point, he pumps it up. He's going to pump it up enough to make sure that that tire gets seated on the rim. Sometimes you can actually hear it pop onto the rim. Depends on the tire and the rim, but I've seen it where people get crooked on the rim. So in other words, part of the tire is unevenly out on the sides of the rim. That'll be a problem on the road. So he's inspecting the rim to make sure there's no like twists or extra tube popping out, or maybe the rim isn't equally placed. Go around it carefully both sides. It looks great.
Okay.
So at this point then you would use a CO2 cartridge or a pump to pump it up to your recommended pressure. Again, a warning, a lot of hand pumps don't go up for a road tire. Like I used to keep mine at 110, but my pump I think would only go up to 100 or 80, something like that. So make sure you get a correct pump. And also when you're putting the tire back on the bike, does everybody know there's a direction that the tire is supposed to
Oh,
seat in?
and I forgot to look again.
So when you put the tire on the rim, you should make sure that the tire says what direction it's supposed to be in. And it is printed on there. We looked for it the other night.
Yep.
And make sure your brakes are engaged when you put your tire back on. Sometimes you have to loosen your brakes to get the tire out. And you should always do a test ride to make sure that the tire is working. Any questions? Who wants to
It's a very
Yes,
easy
sir.
one.
For anybody that uses the tubeless, I've heard a lot of people use sealant, like flat out.
Yeah, I didn't bring mine with me. I don't,
Has anybody used flat out in a tube? You know, a regular inner tube?
You don't wanna do that,
Yeah,
because if you do get a puncture in your tube, that it will leak out into your tire and cause a problem.
Okay,
Yeah. But I use sealant in my tubeless tires, I wouldn't ride without it.
yeah.
I used to ride with tubeless tires. I had a damage that required replacing it with a tube. And I found it very inconvenient to deal with the sealant.
Pain in the,
It
you know
is,
what?
and I got home and cleaned it up and put a tube back in.
Wait, you had a flat with a tubeless,
That I could not reinflate, that's correct.
okay, and,
But, and when I tried to repair it by putting a tube in the tire, it
oh,
was made such an unbelievable mess.
yeah, that would be, on the road, that would be
Yeah.
fun, yeah, I don't think so.
So you bring rubber gloves when you ride on the
It makes a
road,
mess.
you know,
No, my phone number.
DR 549.
Yeah, these are plugs, but, yeah, you have to, I've used it once where I did have a flat and I did have to use a plug. It took a while for it to get, push its way in. Yeah.
You have a
Thank
question
you.
back?
Any other